Before we dive into today's episode of Your Partner in Success Radio, I want to take a moment to highlight someone who can help you elevate your podcasting journey. And that person is David L. Brown, the Business Plan Answer Man. If you are pondering whether your podcast is a hobby or if it has the potential to become a thriving business, David offers invaluable insights and guidance. Check out his resources to learn how to strategically transform your passion into profit and figure out if you're a hobby or not. This is important when it starts getting to the point where you're budgeting. So head on over to businessplananswerman.com and download your free copy of Create a Business Plan that works for you. Good morning and welcome to Your Partner in Success Radio. I am your host, Denise Griffiths, and this podcast is ranked in the top 1.5% of the most popular podcasts globally. And it's because of my guests. Honestly, they are fantastic. I am honored and blessed to share time with people who are at the top of their game, and they show up here willing to help you get to where you want to be in life and in business. So today you get to meet Dianna Kokoszka. She is an inspiring entrepreneur, business leader, and the author of Becoming More. You can't get better until you get to different. And with a wealth of experience as a former CEO at Keller Williams Realty, she has made a significant impact in the world of leadership and personal development. And she's not just an expert in neuro-linguistic programming. This is important. Write this down. She is also a founding member of the John Maxwell team of certified coaches. And in her book, which is on my desk, I'm looking at it right now, Dianna shares valuable insights that empower readers to take charge of their lives and embrace a growth mindset. That's so important. And her passion for developing leaders shines through as she encourages everyone to recognize their potential. And honestly, that can be hard for many of us. We think we know what we're doing. We really don't. So good morning, Dianna. It is such a pleasure to have you here. And thank you for sending me your book.
Denise, thank you so much for having me on. And I know a lot about you. You've read all the books. I mean, you are a reader, which means you're a leader.
And see, I like that. But I think I've shared with you before that if you hand me a TV remote, I'm just going to look at you and probably toss it under the couch. I don't want anything like that. You hand me a stack of books, I love you. I'm all happy. So listen, before we get started, can you tell people a bit about you that I didn't share? And how do you like to show up in the world? What is important to you?
Well, first off, I think the thing that's most important to me is to add value to other people and to make a difference. In fact, in my book, in one of the exercises I've done myself, as crazy as it sounds, is I wrote out my eulogy, what I desire for people to say about me when my time on this earth is gone. And the interesting part is I wrote this out and then I condensed it down more and more and more. I got to where it was just one sentence. She made a difference and added value daily to others. That's what I want to be known for. So every morning I get up and at 7 a.m., an alarm goes off on my phone that says, "What will you do today to add value to others?" And at 7 p.m., the alarm goes off and it says, "What did you do today to add value to others?" So it's a little bit of an accountability system for me. And that adding value really hit home with me when it started when I was 5 years old, Denise. I worked in our family grocery store. I was over the magazine rack. And my dad taught me that if somebody came in, say a man came in and he picked up a magazine with the car on the front of it, all of a sudden I was to grab every magazine that had a car that I could find and say, "Well, if you like that one, you might like these too." And it was adding to what they wanted. When I went to be the cashier and someone would come through with ice cream and I noticed they didn't have any toppings or cherry or whipped cream, I said, "Oh, don't you need like caramel and chocolate and cherries and whipped cream and everything?" And just adding value And Dad says you don't just add to what they buy, hun. You add a smile, you add an encouraging word. If they look nice, don't ever lie about anything. Yet, if they look nice or you like what they have on, compliment them because people in this world desire to feel important. They desire to matter. And it's our job behind the desk or at the magazine rack or wherever you are at in the store is to make certain that people feel important because they're the ones that are actually paying you to work. And they're the reason that this store actually exists.
You were taught to upsell at a very early age, but as you just so eloquently put it, it really wasn't upselling, it was adding to their experience,
I
which makes
love the way
perfect
you
sense
just,
to me.
yeah, I love the way you put that because life is about experiences. And of course, when I first started in real estate, I couldn't afford a babysitter. Uh, so I didn't know what to do, Denise. I put my kids in a little red wagon and started going door to door. And I didn't ask them about having me as their realtor. I actually started asking how I could add value to them. And I found many women that were at home at the time really didn't understand about investing in real estate. So I started teaching them about investing in mortgages and everything. And as I did that, they said, well, I would love to have my husband do this. And I thought, well, what if we got everybody together and we made it like you could have desserts and it'd be in the evening time. And so I could bring my kids because I was a single parent and my kids could play with their kids. And I would sit around and teach people about investing. And of course, when they went to sell their home, they did choose me, which was great. And that first year, I sold 104 homes when the average agent was selling five. And people would say, how did you do it? And I said, I just went out and added value to people, and they wanted to do business with me. From there, I started my own real estate company, had four offices doing very, very well. And Denise, I didn't watch my money. And I hope the listeners really understand how important it is to watch our money. Whether you live by a budget or you don't, at least know what you have, know where it's going. I didn't. I had money coming in. I was living it up. The kids and I were traveling. We were doing great things. We had a motor home. I had more than one car because I like cars. And all of a sudden, I woke up in our property management division. I had 72 houses, and the lady had been embezzling money right and left. I found that I had three house payments for 72 houses that I needed to make up. And of course, I sold everything except for our house. And I borrowed cars from my friends to show property, and I went back to selling. From there, did very well, ended up being asked to go to Keller Williams Realty International and be the CEO. It was over MAPS coaching and training. We were able to take that to become the top training company in the world 5 years straight, which put us in the Hall of Fame. And there's only 17 companies that actually have that. We also became known as the world's largest coaching company for real estate, the most profitable. And we took it from being, well, it was losing $1 million a year to making over $500 million. And I realized that the things that we were doing, the things that I was teaching, really was around mindset. And it wasn't just about growth or fixed mindset, Denise. It was about all the different mindsets that live within us, the entitlement versus gratitude, doubt versus confident, scarcity versus abundant, so many different types of mindsets. And I wanted to know where they came from. Now, my sister and brother both had brain tumors, and I wanted to help them and add value. So I started studying the brain when I was in eighth grade. There wasn't much out at that time about it, yet I continued to study it over and over and over and learn more and more. And like you, I was devouring books that I could find. Putting all this together is how the book is formulated. I came up with a model that allows us to actually change the story of our life, the areas that we do not like, into what we do desire, into a new story, a new way of being, leaving a legacy that we're actually proud of. And the book is not, it's not quite a book, it's more like a workbook, or it gives formulas, it gives exercises to do. And it's not an easy process, yet it is very simple as to how we can change our lives because we change the way we think and we train our brains to a new way of being, to a new story, to a new life, to what it is that we truly desire. And I believe that people are out there that are just, I mean, there's countless people eagerly anticipating that full expression of your greatness. Whoever you are listening, you have greatness inside of you. You have a gift. And I trust that this podcast, whatever we say, will help you open that gift and share that gift with the world so they then can learn from you.
Diane, I'm scribbling notes. I always take a lot of notes when I'm listening to my guests because you're going to say something that just has me go, oh, I need to go back to that, or oh, that needs to wind up in my book. You never know. But I have to say that listening to you tell this story, you went from, oh shit, is what I heard, that's what I wrote down, to flawlessly moving into this giant win without it seems like you didn't miss a beat. You just, well, I got this. And I know that there were steps that you had to take and that you had those oh geez moments where you just clutched your stomach and said, now what? But it doesn't sound to me like you dwelled on it. You just said, well, got to go do something different.
That I stumbled so much. In fact, I learned this from my brother when back in the day, they didn't know that much about brain tumors, that neuroscience was just kind of starting. I mean, I think Yale opened up its first neuroscience division or therapeutic division when he was having this tumor. They kept him in the hospital for about 3, 4 months. They just didn't know what to do. They didn't have physical therapy. They sent him home, and Denise, mom and dad, in their wisdom, bought a tape recorder. So for the young ones that are listening to this, a tape recorder had reel to reels, and you'd push the button and record, and then you'd rewind and say and hear what you had said. And so I would say a word, he would say a word, we'd hit rewind and play it. I'd say it again, he'd say it again. And he literally learned how to walk and talk 4 different times in his life. And I came up with this model that said we learn something, we implement it, we fail at it, we relearn a better way, and it starts all over again. And we're in this continuous loop of learning, implementing, failing, relearning, implementing, failing. Right now, I think a lot of the people, we have so much information that we're addicted to information and we're allergic to implementation. Sometimes we're so frightened to move forward because we're afraid that we'll fail. We're afraid that we'll look bad. We go through the shoulda, coulda, wouldas in our minds. And somehow, some way, we hold ourselves back and we self-sabotage.
Absolutely constantly. I catch myself doing it. And then you're going to laugh at me, but every once in a while I'll do something that is so dumb. And I'm not a stupid person most days, but it's just so dumb that I will literally hold up my left hand and smack it with my right hand and say, bad Denise. That was just stupid. Bad Denise. And then I start laughing and I pull my head out of the doldrums that I just put myself into by being bad Denise, and off I go.
That is so good. Most people use I am statements and they say, like, I am stupid. Oh, that just, I'm going,
Not,
stop, stop, stop.
yeah.
Don't ever say that. Right.
I catch myself at it and go, no, 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 no. And I will also, and I do this a lot too. Oh man, I've got to knock on wood, and then I'm knocking on the top of my head. because, what I did was just wooden headed and I knew it, so I can laugh at myself.
Isn't that good though? Because when we learn to laugh at ourselves, we move forward so much faster. And a lot of times I laugh because people go, oh, well, what will people think? And I go, oh, honey, they're so busy thinking about themselves. They don't have time to think about you. I'm so sorry. So I love the
Charge.
fact that you're
Yeah.
willing to get to different.
Oh, I have to. I would drive myself absolutely buggy. But yeah, one of the things that I learned a long time ago, I'm a highly committed introvert. So I watch and I listen and I pick up a lot of things that maybe extroverts might not. But I'm always watching, listening, cataloging, especially about myself. Denise, what the heck was that? You've been here, done that. Don't do it again. And then I keep moving on. But what I have learned is if you will pay attention and listen and watch and catalog, you can move forward quicker. You really can. But I love the fact that this book, and I was talking with you about it in the green room, you've got spots on it, you've got pages where you can write in it. I was sharing with you that when I was a kid, we spent a lot of time in the library. And our local librarian she didn't really have a ruler and she wasn't a nun, but she scared the bejeebers out of all of us. Do not mark that book. Do not turn those pages down. Do not slap that thing open and break the spine. To this day, I keep waiting for her to, in her ghostly self, get me if I do anything like that. But you've got all kinds of areas in this book where people can go, let me write that down. Now, me, I sticky note everything because I don't want to mark up the book, but I do want to go back to it. So I've got sticky notes all over the place.
You
And you were telling me this wonderful story in the green room, and please share that because that's one of the funniest things I've ever heard.
well, I got to tell you, I laughed when I heard it as well. John Maxwell, who's been my mentor for over 28 years, and of course, I have all of his books, and I'm like you. The books that he signs for me, I don't write in. And yet I do buy an extra book and I write all over that and underline and do all sorts of crazy things in and on the book. He was telling a story though. One time he went to speak at a person's corporation and he was in their office. And of course, he looks up and he sees his books on the shelf. And the gentleman excuses himself to go to the restroom. And so he pulls down one of his books and he opens it up and he can tell the pages haven't even been flipped. So he decides to write in the book to, and the person's name. This is your friend, John Maxwell. When you get to this part, call me. And he put his cell phone down, put it back up on the shelf, waited. He goes, I got to do another one. So he pulls it down in the front of the book and it says, after you read this, call me, John Maxwell, your friend. And he puts his cell phone number. So he does that in 3 or 4 different books. And of course, I said, did you ever hear from him? And he said, nope, never called me.
Was it Napoleon Hill, I think, that said, because has still, he's been dead, I believe, 50 years or longer, that his book, Think and Grow Rich, is one of the most purchased books and one of the least read.
Isn't that interesting?
It's horrifying. It
To
really
purchase a
is.
book that can change your life. By the way,
Yeah.
that is one of my favorite books, and I've read it and reread it. There are some books that you've got to devour it. It's something that you just can't read one time. Like Man's Search for Meaning is another one that's so important that it's challenging to read sometimes, yet that one I'll read about every other year because I think it just has so much depth in it. And I think so many of us out there, Denise, we want more in our life, yet are we willing to pay the price to get it? We have uphill goals with downhill habits, is what John Maxwell taught me. And, I realize that if we want our life to be different, if we want it to be better, if we want to improve any area, then it's up to us. And I have a saying, you can't get to better until you get to different. And different is scary, it's uncommon, it's unfamiliar, it's unusual, yet it's unavoidable if you want to improve your life. And you being a reader, I mean, how many things have you read that you've implemented and it changed your life?
So many. One of my favorite people in the world is Ben Gay III. In fact, he's my podcast host, co-host on Wednesdays, and he was the final mentee of Dr. Napoleon Hill. I pick his brain every chance I get. Every chance I'm not even subtle about it. He knows what I'm doing. But I've read his books. I've read Viktor Frankl. You just mentioned him, Man's Search for Meaning. I've read look, I started reading when I was 3 years old. I didn't know what I was reading. They weren't coloring books. They were books. And I remember my kindergarten teacher having a bit of a tiff with my mom, telling her that essentially I was a liar, that I kept saying I could read. And my mom was 5 foot nothing much and a half. I used to tell her she was travel size, but she's tiny. I'm the runt in the family. I'm only 5'7.5", so you can imagine how big they all got. But I remember my mom, and I was thinking, oh gee, she can jump like a flea. Somebody's going to get hurt. And she looked up at this woman. She said, have you given her anything to read? Very quietly. And Mrs. Keller said, well, no, we don't have books in here. And my mom said, she can read. Oh, 3, 4, 5. I wasn't reading well, but I was
Wow.
reading. And I'll never forget this. And I've forgotten most of my teachers because I hated school. But I remember this woman looking down at my mom saying, well, how can she read? Who taught her? And my mom looked at her and said, we didn't tell her she couldn't read. And that was it. That was the end of that argument.
Words are so important.
I
And I think
know.
people grow into the conversations we create around them. And because your parents never said you couldn't read, you didn't grow into that conversation. You grew into a conversation that you could do what they desired for you. You could do anything that you desired to do because that's how they talked with you. They were training your brain at a young age to not put limits on yourself.
Same. Remember, I told you I got your book. I read it. I reviewed it. It's on Amazon. It's everywhere. And then this weekend, when I knew I was going to be speaking with you again, I sat down and I read the whole book again. Now I skimmed because I read very fast and I had all my sticky notes. But I kept going back to my kindergarten teacher saying, well, she can't read. She can't read. Yes, I can. And that lesson is in your book. We can do what we think we can do, what we know we can do.
Isn't it interesting? A lot of people say it's because we have confidence. And I don't know if it's confidence as much as self-worth. Oh, is it confidence? Is it self-worth? Because they're two different things. And in my book, I talk about the way that we limit ourselves and the way that we liberate ourselves through our character, our mindset, our thoughts, our beliefs, our values, our energy, all areas of our lives were limiting or liberating. And you were willing to, well, there's 4 storytellers as I talk in my book that live in our mind. And the first one was your kindergarten teacher. She was the storyteller, the devious storyteller, telling you what you couldn't do, what, you can't do that, you're too young, or you're too this or too that, right? And our brain tells us those stories and we listen to it. And then there's the flattering storyteller that tells us, we already know that. We don't have to listen to anybody else. We can't learn from anybody. We already know that. We're very egotistical. Or sometimes it's that we just think we're better than we are. And then there's the reasonable storyteller, and that's the one that frightens me. And we hear it a lot where we give ourselves reasons and excuses as to why things are happening the way they are. And I say you can have reasons or results, and yet you can't have both. But the fourth storyteller is the one that I aim to have people enhance and grow. And that's the empowering storyteller, the one that you had in your mind that said, yes, I can read. I can do this. I'm doing it better every single day.
Right.
And every book you read, you allow that empowering storyteller to take effect in your mind and make things go and work out for you in the direction that you desire to go.
I go back to books all the time. I have hundreds of books in here, hundreds. Every single one came from people like you, my guess. I've read every single one of them, but I have one shelf in particular, well, one bookcase in particular. It's the closest to my desk, and those are the books that I grab all the time. Might be once or twice a year, it might be every other month. You never know, but they're there. And when I need them, I bet this happens to you too. I can literally, probably because I've gone to the same pages over and over again, I can open that book and it's going to answer me right then, right there. It's almost like magic. Whatever I was looking for, it's going to flip open to that page.
Isn't it interesting how that works? Now, I'm not quite that good. I put in the back of my books because I write in them. I'll put like page 91 values to remind myself there's something about values on page 91. And after I go back to a book over and over again, then yes, I can go, oh, page 91. Yet I've got to have that extra help. That's why I write in mine.
Librarian, not none, would come get me. I know she's gone. She's been gone a long time. If I even thought about, I was talking with Ben Gay one day and I had to make a tiny note on the closers part two, tiny note. And I said it to him on the radio. I just marked up this book. I was ready to cry, but it was so important. And he said, well, see, now you can do it. I said, no, 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 I can't. And I'm never doing it again. I was literally, you're going to think I'm an idiot. I was looking over my shoulder. I mean, that's how ingrained that library was in my life when I was a kid.
What's interesting about that is that's how our brain is trained. It's kind of like walking across a patch of grass. Like let's say you live next door to me, and rather than to go down the sidewalk out to the road, up your sidewalk, I just walked across the grass to get there. It was fast, it was easy. And the first time it wouldn't even matter. By the second time, it wouldn't matter. But about the 10th time, it's starting to wear. And pretty soon there's a rut. There's no grass at all. Well, that's how our brain works. It goes from one neuron, the thought, to another neuron. And of course, there's a lot that happens in between. Yet, once it's that neuron, that pathway, the more we have that thought, the nun is there, the nun is there. She's going to wrap my hands with the ruler. It ingrains and instantly it takes that pathway because it's so easy. Now, the greatest part, there's two things about neuroscience. It says nerve cells that fire together, wire together. That's how we're always thinking the same thoughts. And nerve cells that no longer fire together, no longer wire together. So we stop walking across the grass, and pretty soon the grass starts coming back, and you would never know that there was a rut there and a pathway before. That's the way our brain is. So we can retrain our brain to a new way of thinking. We have to have one thought over and over and over again to have a belief set in.
I'm so glad you brought that up because I will catch myself in that rut. We all do it. It's just habit. And habits are not necessarily a good thing. And I will deliberately, and I want you to talk about that a bit. What steps can we take to change a story? I will deliberately have that chat with myself and say, okay, we're not going to do this anymore. This thought doesn't hold any water for me. It's not true. It doesn't make any sense to me. Stop it. So then but that's not the end of it. I have to now find an alternate thought. And that takes a little bit of thinking.
It really does, because we're so ingrained in the one thought. In fact, depending which research study, Denise, that you look at, One study says we have 6,000 thoughts a day. Another study says we have over 60,000 thoughts a day. And it's not that we have a lot of thoughts. The problem is that 90% of them are the same thoughts we had yesterday and the day before that and the day before that, and nothing changes. But even worse, 85% of them are negative thoughts. And so to change our
So
story,
true.
first of all, we want to look at how did we even form the story that we have? And the first step is we have an experience, right? And we experience something and our brain goes back through the filing cabinet, so to speak, on all the things we've done before, and it pulls out the file like, oh, this time is like that time. And it makes a judgment based on what just happened. And based on that judgment, it makes up a story. And because we want to look good and be right, and our brain always wants to be right, and part of our brain has a reticular activating system. We call it the RAS for short. And it's kind of like our Google search engine that it only looks for what we want. Much like when you put something into Google, it doesn't show you everything on the internet and the World Wide Web. It just shows you what you asked for. Well, that's what our eyes can only see and our ears can only hear what our brain tells them to. So now, based on this story, we're looking for evidence for the story and we disregard everything else. Well, with that, we actually start predicting our future based on the story we just made up. So if we desire to change a story, we have to stop it at the judgment and say, is that the story I truly desire to believe? Is that the thought that is absolutely true? So we notice the thought and then we ask ourselves questions about that thought, like, who would I be without that thought? How would I feel without that thought? Or is it true? Is it 100% true? How do I act when I believe that? And then from there, we choose a new thought, focus on that new thought, much like taking a camera when whatever you focus on comes into view. And now we have a new thought that we have to develop. And it's thinking that thought over and over and over again that allows us to put it into our brain and train our brain to that new thinking.
Diana, because, just affirmations don't really work for me. I'm too logical. I fight with my nerve system. She's not the boss of me. I'm not going to go left right now. I want to go that way. So affirmations just don't really work. But I find that if I have emotion attached to whatever it is that I'm really trying to retrain myself with, that works much better. I have to feel it. I can't just write it down. I can't scribble it on my mirror and read it to myself while I'm brushing my teeth. I have to feel it. So I wanted to ask you, because one of my favorite chapters is chapter 10, emotions, feeling the feels. And boy, that one grabbed me.
Isn't it interesting? Emotions, it's this mind and body loop that we get involved in. Like when we have an insecure thought, we feel insecure. And because we feel insecure, our body allows us to have more insecure thoughts. And we get caught in this trap with the emotions. And that emotion means so much. In fact, one of the things I did, Denise, in one of our trainings, and I did this every year with our staff, is I had them write a letter as though the year was actually over. For example, let's say that it's October of 2025, and I write a letter to Dear Self. The last year has been amazing because, and I write out this letter of all the things I've accomplished, and I put a lot of emotion in it. And one of the ladies, for example, wrote about how her daughter was going to the junior prom and she was taking pictures of her and she was so proud of her in her beautiful blue dress and coming down a curved staircase, and it was just elegant and she described it with much emotion. Well, I would take those letters, put them in an envelope, put down their address, and I kept them for a year. And then I mailed them back to them. Well, the interesting part, she didn't live in a house with a curved staircase. And yes, her daughter was going to the junior prom during that year. She opened up the letter and she calls me and she goes, "You're not going to believe this." And I go, "What am I not going to believe?" And she said, "We moved during the year and we bought a house with a curved staircase. And my daughter did come down it and she was wearing a blue dress. I forgot all about this letter." And she went on and on and on the various things that were in this letter. And I said, "Look at how much emotion you put in that letter." And as she read it, there was so much emotion put into it. I don't believe people realize how much emotions control our lives. And when we use them in the right direction, they're a choice. And when we choose to feel a certain way, that we can choose that emotion, and that emotion then helps us choose the way that we live.
As soon as we're done here today, I am writing myself a letter. I never even thought about that. I do try to journal. I'm not real good at it because I get in a hurry. We all do. And that's my excuse. It's not a good one, but I'm always in a hurry. I'm always working for other people, doing other people's work and not my own. Another excuse, and I get that. But I'm going to write a letter because this year has been upsy daisy from 1 to the 31st of the end of the year. It's just been a crazy year, but in so many ways, some spectacular things have happened, and I have not given them much thought. And I'm ashamed of myself for that.
No, you know what's interesting? And what a great learning experience. I love that that happened to you because look at what you've learned. And I believe that a lot of the people, I mean, I know my year has been one of the craziest ones. As I speak with people, the anxiety, the worry, the stress is a lot higher than what it used to be. And I do know that the book can actually help them. One of the things that will help our brain is many times, Denise, people say, "Well, they made me upset. What they did is they made me upset." And no one can really make us upset. So when we say, like, "I feel upset," at least we're owning it a little bit. Or if we say, "I am upset," yet what is even better is to say, "I am choosing to feel upset." And the minute that we say that in our mind or out loud, "I am choosing to feel this way," that allows our brain to know that we have a choice to feel another way. And the minute we choose to feel a different way, everything in our brain and our body changes. The chemicals that are being poured into our body change. And I think what you and I are both talking about is awareness. And awareness is the first step to change. And what we become aware of, are we willing to make the change is the next thing. Are we willing to take on something different? Because in my book, I talk about we live between B and D, birth and death. And between B and D, there is C, and that C stands for choice. And it's through the choices that we make that determine the life that we live. And if we don't like the life we're living, we need to make a different choice because who we are being is so much more important than what we're doing or what we have or what we even give. Because it's from who we are being that we're able to do what we do, have what we have, and give what we give.
I agree with you. I'm almost stuttering. I agree with you so much, but I will tell you when I catch myself being more than a little cranky, and I will say, and I wanted to talk to you about saying stuff out loud, and I'll get to that in a second, but I will literally stand up and say, "All right, Denise, you're going to have a hissy fit. Take it outside." By the time I make it outside, I've leashed the dog. I'm laughing at myself because I'm a moron, as Reba McEntire would say. So I'm outside, we're walking around, and I'm laughing at myself. I get back in. I feel better. I've gotten fresh air. I've walked a bit, and I've had a chat with my inner child. and smacked her around a little bit, which, is probably not always a good thing. But I have had, it's been my experience, just speaking out loud, and you were talking about how many thoughts we have. Too many. I mean, seriously, there's just too many. There's intersections, there's stop signs, there's cars honking at you. These thoughts are just
Yes.
driving you crazy. And I have found, and because I live alone, I can do this without anybody trying to lock me away, that and I'll stand up to do it. I always stand up because I'm speaking to a higher power, I believe. And I will say whatever it is that's got me stumped or is bothering me, or I just want to go, woohoo, I will say it out loud. Oftentimes to my ceiling fan. I don't know what's up there, but I talk to my ceiling fan a lot. And once I do that, I have found, and I don't know if there's any basis to this at all, it's just my observation. If you're speaking a thought, you're pretty much limited to that one thought. You can't have a bunch of, beeping cars behind you. Does that make sense?
It makes perfect
Okay,
sense
good.
because
I thought I
it
was
is the
nuts. I
way,
wasn't sure.
no, the way we talk to ourselves actually matter more than the way that other people talk to us. And in this story of our life, well, let's think about the stories, Denise. Even Hollywood takes on that every story has a victim, a villain, a hero. Some of them have coaches and mentors. But that victim, we can get caught in that mentality and the way that we talk to ourselves. And when we get there, then do we stand up and beat ourselves up by becoming the villain in our own story? Or do we become the hero? What you keep talking about is you become the overcomer, the warrior, the champion, the rescuer, that you're there to look back at your past, learn from your past, and kind of scold yourself to say, okay, let's get out of this conundrum and move forward. And that's what I just love
Yeah.
about the way you're speaking is you don't have to stay where you're at.
No,
Let's
no.
figure out a way to move forward and to know that the limiting things that we're doing in our life and then what we do to liberate them to a new story where we are the hero of our own life.
And when I was reading the book over the weekend, I was like, oh, she gets me. She really, really gets me. This, I think, if you are stuck in any kind of a way, or you just, maybe want to read something that's going to make you feel, I've got this, I can do this, I can make these changes, grab this book. But you said something just now, and I've said this on the show before, but honestly, the way we speak to ourselves can be so crippling. And I have been known to say, look, if anybody spoke to me in, let's say, a Walmart parking lot the way I speak to myself, I'd need
Yeah.
bail money. I would be in jail.
Wouldn't that be that is so true. And I think sometimes that we want perfection so much and we judge ourselves so much instead of just giving gratitude for all that we have. I hear so many people complaining, and I have a saying, complaining equals garbage magnet. When you complain, you just find more things to complain about. And when you find gratitude and you're grateful for things, you just find more things to be grateful for. And sometimes we just need to take a gratitude walk. You think about things as you walk, even to the coffee machine, think about things that you're thankful for. And on your way back to your desk, say to yourself or out loud, I'm grateful for whatever it is you were talking about. I mean, just have gratitude, even for some of the bad things that happened to us. Be grateful that you've had that and it's over with. And what did I learn from it? And how can I go forward? Because one thing I do know from looking at so many brain scans and talking with doctors is when we can have an attitude of gratitude, when we can think, because can't be in a grateful mindset and a negative one at the same time. They have done studies. In fact, there was one done where they took 30 people in, Denise, and they had them write down things they were grateful for. And then they waited about 30 minutes, did brain scans on them. Everything, oh, it was so lit up. the brain, the cerebellum, where our intuition and our creativity live, and our amygdala wanted to go into action, great emotions, happiness, joy, the limbic system, everything was just so wonderful. The neocortex wanted to learn, everything lit up. Now they take them back in the room and they say, what if? What if your dog died? What if you lost your job? What if somebody hacked into your bank account and took all your money? What if you had the news that you had a terrible disease? And then they did brain scans, and Denise, nothing was lit up except for anxiety, worry, the part of our brain, the negative emotions. There was no logic. There was nothing in the neocortex wanting to learn. There was no creativity, no intuition area. And I really trust that people will get this. If you're having a bad day, think of all the things to be grateful for. It won't come about right away. Go out and serve somebody else. It won't come about right away, yet it will eventually help you feel better because your brain is off of yourself and focused on others. I just know it will work if
It
people will just.
does. It really does. And I know this for a fact because I had to learn gratitude. You'd think it would come natural to me. You would think it would come natural to most people, but I don't think it does. And
No.
years ago, I've been doing this podcast for 16 years. I'm thinking it's going to need a debut dance pretty soon, like a debutante dance. I may throw a party for it. But anyway, it's neither here nor there. But years ago, I had a man on the show, and he had been, I don't remember if it was brain cancer, some kind of cancer, but he had been diagnosed with a terrible cancer and basically said, go home and get your affairs in order. And so he did. And he had the surgery, I believe, but he refused to have anything else. He didn't want poison or, any of the other tools that are used. He just said, no, I'm not going to do that. And he embarked on what he called massive, massive gratitude, massive. And he kept stressing that. And he kind of walked me through it. Now, this was 5 years after he had been diagnosed.
Wow.
I know. And I went, because I'm one of those people. I've always been one of those people. I wake up, my eyes open, my feet hit the floor, and the devil says, oh, crap, she's awake. I had to train myself to stay in bed that few minutes longer, even though a cat was on my bladder, to sit there, lay there with my eyes closed or looking up at the ceiling fan and express my gratitude for anything, everything out loud. It changed me. It did change me.
It does. And I love that you do it out loud because you're putting that out to the universe. You're letting the energy out. And the energy of gratitude is an energy. Well, in my book, I talk about the 4 energies of success, and that being one of them. And it's my favorite one to talk about because when you have that energy of gratitude, it's so amazing. It's like your whole life lights up in such a different way. And gratitude leads to generosity, and the hand that's open to give is open to receive. And so I think the world just gives us so much more when we're in that state.
No question at all about it. And I have to ask you, can you come back in the new year? Because there's so many things about this book that I wanted to cover, and there's just not time. So can you come back?
I would love to come back,
Okay.
Denise, and thank you so much for having me on this time. It's been fun. This has
Well, we're
been
not.
one of the best ones.
Oh, thank you. And I wanted to ask, but I wanted to get that out of the way because I did not want to forget. But everything about this book is just, I'm telling you, I almost picked up my laptop and sent you a note. It's like, you get me. You really, really get me. It was just so charming and so informative all at the same time. But I wanted to ask you because I think this is really important. We haven't covered it yet. How can adopting a be, excuse me, be, do, have, give approach change our perspective on success? And that success can be personal, it can be business, it can be darn near anything, but be, do, have, give.
I am so excited that you brought that up because that is one of my favorite parts. Because right now, it's like the victim thinks like, well, if I had what my neighbor had, I could do what they do and then I could be like them. And they live in that have, do, be world, always looking at what they don't have, right? And then the villain, of course, they come along and they go, no, you just have to do more. And then they think if you do more, then you can have more, and then you can be more and you can give more. So they live in that do, have, be, give world. But the hero totally understands. You have to think like the person thinks in order to do what that person does. You have to be like that person to do what they do. And then when you do what they do, you can have what they have. And when you have what they have, you can give like they give. And so when we work on ourselves, because the moment that we start thinking that the external world is more important than the internal world, then nothing in our life is going to change. And it's going to be like being on the treadmill or that movie. What was the movie that they kept reliving Groundhog Day over and over and
Yeah.
over again? So we've got to become more. And when we become more, then we can do more. And when we do more, we can have more. And when we have more, we can give more and just have a wonderful life. And it's a constant. I mean, I work on myself daily, just like you do, Denise. I don't have the answers. I have learned a lot. I think it comes from being old. So life has given me a lot of ups and downs, and
Oh, if we're
that's
alive, that's going to happen. It can happen 4 times in one day. I don't know why people
oh
think, no, life is supposed to be easy. It's not. You're supposed
no.
to learn from it. You're supposed to give from it. There's so many things you should be doing, but easy, it ain't.
Oh, that's right. It's so interesting. I've gone from the heights of glory to the depths of depression all in the same 10 minutes, right? So it's like we never know.
No, you don't. But if you're smart, you'll walk outside with the dog and say, okay, we're going to go outside and kick a tire. I do that. I've been known to go outside and kick a tire. What the heck? Why not? I try to put shoes on before I do it. But, when you need to kick a tire, you go outside and do it. But the
You
thing
do it.
is, yeah, it helps. But the thing is, we live in our hearts and our souls and our minds and our brains. Not everything is external. In fact, it shouldn't be, but you should. If I'm reading you correctly, you should be paying great attention to what you're thinking, what you're doing, how you're behaving.
Yes, because see, our values are how we have success in life. Our values like the pathway of this journey that we're on. And I wonder if people ever think about values is one of my favorite chapters in here where we actually think about our values, write down our definition of them, where we use them, where maybe we could have used them better. And I think even that gives us a guiding light to having a better life and do the reflection that you're talking about. I think we're going so fast in today's world that we forget sometimes to just sit at night and go, what did I do great today that I hope I'll always do again? And what did I do today that I hope I'll never do again, right? What did I learn from it? And if that thing happened, how would I act differently? How would I react differently? Could I stop and breathe for a minute before I reacted to it? Because we're all triggered by everything that's going on. Yet it's that reflection time, that personal growth, and I have a chapter in here, as you know, about personal growth, because to me, growth is the only guarantee that tomorrow will be better than today. And that's what my mentor, John Maxwell, taught me. So it's always about growing and becoming more because we're either going forward or backwards. There's no standing still in this world.
That chapter you just referenced, personal growth, is chapter 17. And the one you referenced just before that was chapter 9 on page 125. So anybody who's following along, get the book. Now you know where to go. We're sharing with you. But listen, I wanted to ask you, and we can talk more about this in the next conversation that we have. Mentors, they are so important. How do you find the best mentors? How do you choose the right mentors? And why does it matter who we learn from? I've always heard that old saw, you are the sum of the five people you hang around with the most.
Mm.
The easier way for me to say that is water seeks its own level.
That's true. And I like the way that you say it. Absolutely. And in my day, it was birds of a feather flock together. We are attracted to people who are like us. And when we go and we find somebody that we desire to be like, we got to hang out with them because their words will fall on us, their thoughts will fall on us. And pretty soon, our thoughts become like their thoughts. So in choosing a mentor, I always want someone that is ahead of me, that that gets me, like you said, that truly understands, that is not judgmental, that wants the very best for me. Because like I want to stand for people's greatness more than they take a stand for their limitations. Because so many of us want to take that stand like this is who I am and I can't change myself. Yes, you can change with great mentors. Einstein was a mentor of mine. I'm not old enough to have known him, yet I read about him. I read about how he wouldn't keep things in his mind. He wrote them down because he wanted his mind open for creativity, that he was always looking on how you could better that, how you could better yourself. Why did that happen? He had that curious mindset. Zig Ziglar. My dad sold tickets for the American Motivational Society, so we were able to have great people in our home. Zig Ziglar was one of my favorite, and he was someone that drilled in my head. You become like the people you hang out with. And so I found myself, if I read a good book, where's that person speaking? And that's how I met John Maxwell. I read his 21 Irrefutable Laws of Leadership and heard he was speaking in Dallas. So off to Dallas I went and, of course, met him. And when he went to sign my book, I put my hand over it and I said, "Stop." He said, "Look at me. You said you're John and you're my friend, and I'm Dianna, and I will become one of your best friends." And now I have his cell phone. I've traveled with him and his team to the world, teaching values to kids in many countries. Now we're doing it here in the United States. I'm so excited about what's happening with these children learning values and bullying going down in the schools, etc. But I chose him because of the way he thinks, because of his values, the way that he lives. Uh, I've had so many mentors. Susan Scott was a coach of mine and then became a mentor. She wrote Fierce Conversations, and I loved the book. So I wanted to learn more about how she thought about conversations, how you could have that conversation that's so tough and yet do it in such a loving way that people would open their hearts and their minds to hear what you had to say. So think it's look at their values. Do you want to be like them? And if you don't have them as a mentor. Do you want to learn from them? Are you willing to ask questions? And then, more importantly, what you learn from a mentor, tell them what you're learning and how you're implementing it, because that keeps them desiring to come back. I'm mentoring right now 37 people, and we're having a ball. We're just doing Zoom calls where I teach and they ask questions. We're doing events where we get together and have experiences, and we bring in top thought leaders so they can learn from them. But yes, mentors, you can have more than one. Who is it that you desire? More importantly, who is it
So
you want to
many
be like
people,
them?
right?
Yeah.
So many people. And I love what you're saying about mentoring. I have been nagged at, and my friend who's listening knows who I'm talking about, Tammy, but she likes to say she was encouraging me to start mentoring people to start their own podcasts. And I finally did it. And I don't know what I was so afraid of. I just don't know what had me just going, no, I don't want to do that. I was whiny. And now I'm like, I should have done this 10 years ago.
Isn't it interesting how we talk ourselves out of things and we need that person, that
Yep.
mentor, that friend that
Right.
gives us a good kick, swift kick in the butt and says, now you owe it to the world to go do this, right? Now go do it. And I'm glad that she did that. Good for you, Tammy. That was
Yeah.
great.
Oh God, no,
Oh,
I'll never
God.
hear the end of it. But you referenced something very similar at the top of the show, and I was like, yep, yep, yep. I mean, once you kind of get out there and you start sharing what you know and can do, people are looking for you. They're waiting for you. They need you. So get out of your own way. Dianna, we're about to run out of time and I hate that, but you're coming back. So thank you for sharing your truly inspiring journey and your insights with us today. And I'm losing my voice. Before we close, is there anything else you'd like to share with our audience? And where can people connect with you? And where can they find your book? And I know that's three separate things.
Well, the thing I would love to tell people is what I kind of started out with, that you all have a gift. Please open it up and share it with the world, because there are so many people out there just waiting for you to help them. And don't be selfish. Don't hold it in. Let it out and let the world learn from you because you have something to teach. The other part, you can reach me on Facebook, Instagram, TikTok, Dianna.Kokoszka. Now that's a tough one because Dianna has two N's and Kokoszka, Kokoszka. And then as far as the book, well, you can get it on Amazon, Becoming More. You can't get to better until you get to different.
Well, listen, everybody, as we wrap up today's episode with Dianna, let me do it. I can do this. Kokoszka.
Oh, you did.
I
That
did.
is good. So good.
Well, I just heard you, and I had written it down phonetically, so I got this, I got this. But I have had the pleasure of exploring key concepts from her book, Becoming More. Y'all, please go get that book. It belongs in your entrepreneurial library. I am not kidding. And we delved into the importance of championing people's greatness, changing our personal narratives, and prioritizing learning. We didn't really prioritize this just yet, but we will in the next one, learning over material possessions. That's going to be an important conversation. Dianna has emphasized the value of choosing the right mentor, so important, and embracing lessons from failure. We also briefly discussed how adopting a be, do, have, give approach can reshape our views on success and help us recognize those limiting patterns that we're all afflicted with. And we touch briefly on the four energies of success. Again, please go read this book. So listen, everybody, thank you for joining us. And if you want to leave a positive legacy, this book can help you. It can guide you and walk you down those steps. So thank you all for joining me today, and I hope you feel inspired to become the champion of your own story. Dianna, thank you so much, and I look forward to having you back in the new year.
Thank you so much, Denise. I look forward to it as well.
Get your voice heard. If you would like to launch your own far-reaching podcast, contact Denise Griffiths at yourofficeontheweb.com and go to the podcast tab.